Okay.
Yep.
Roll them.
Roll them, roll them, roll them. Okay.
So I just did this exercise because you said, hey, can you give me 10 minutes before we speak? And so I just set the timer and I did absolutely nothing for 10 minutes.
Uh-huh. How'd that go?
It was wonderful.
I rarely do nothing for 10 minutes.
She can never do nothing.
Try it.
I'll try it later. So what are the non-dual things we want to talk about? What's the question?
I want to talk about this idea of doing nothing for a second because, often if I set a timer, I might meditate or do breath work. So I was just wondering, have you ever done that? That's my question to you. Is like not meditated, not done a body scan, not do breath work, not like locate energy in your body, none of it. Like just 10 minutes.
I feel like I do that every morning in the hot tub. I really do nothing. I don't really meditate, although I just sit with a quiet mind among the trees. I say good morning to my 13 sisters. I see what their faces are like because the bark is a little different every day in terms of the moisture or the light. So I see how the trees are, but it's really a doing nothing, just being.
Yeah, that feels really beautiful to do that in nature.
It feels really good to do it in nature. I have more trouble doing it in, inside when there's so much to be busy with, so much to be distracted by. But I can do it in nature. I can do it sitting outside.
All those things that you said about setting the clock and doing, are those practices that you do regularly?
That's funny you ask because I was just, the more the words that have been coming out of this mouth more and more are just like no path, no practice. There's no practice that anyone can do to wake up if there's no one to wake up. But practices can still be beautiful. So no, it hasn't been a practice that I've been doing. It was just something completely random.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my experience is that whatever level of enlightenment or that you achieve, all that is to practice, to keep practicing. There's no end to the need for practice.
Well, it's not to get someplace. It's the process of just being in that state, right?
That's another good question. Is like, does a practice have to have a goal?
I think if it's a spiritual practice, it can't have a goal. It's just the way you focus attention.
That's very wise.
Right. Because if you're doing a practice, well, it depends on what practice. Of course, if you're practicing the piano, you have to get your scales right. If you're practicing art, you want to get the drawing better. But if you're doing a spiritual practice, the goal is to be there as little as possible. And when you are trying to do something, you've got a part, the IFS terms, you've got a part there that's a trying part, and a part there that's kind of like watching and seeing how you're doing. So
Did you ever, you did something with Est, right? The forum or
When I was
something,
a teenager.
landmark?
Yeah.
Did they do the trying thing? Try to pick that up? Did they do that?
You know, that's so crazy that you mentioned that, because no, they didn't. But I was listening to an audio book, and for the first time, someone brought it up last night. Isn't that crazy?
Never crazy. It's all
Talk
connected.
about it.
I never heard about it. So what's
Talk
the
about it.
Try to pick it up.
Okay, I did.
You did?
Mhm. It didn't get picked up, but I tried.
So you're clear, if you picked it up, you wouldn't be trying,
No, I'd be picking it up,
right?
right? But I can try to pick, I could even try to make it rise.
Mhm. That's less successful even.
It's doing about the same.
Mhm.
I could try to make it fall off the desk.
She's too clever. You're too clever for this exercise, Mom.
So is that what it is? Yeah.
Is what?
Is that the goal?
To appreciate the difference between trying and picking it up.
Right. I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Warner opened some doors for me with regard to taking on a teacher that was opening to the invisible. My teachers before him were Buckminster Fuller and Bruno Branowski, and they were both very much into the world in science and understanding reality from the place of science. And without duality, we would have no science.
say more.
Yeah.
There had to be a separate from subject and object in order for science to actually do repeatable experiments. So we owe the world that we have to science, and that means we owe the world that we have to duality.
Yeah, and going back to this idea of trying, I mean, that's what a lot of people have done, right? With like spiritual practice,
Mhm.
trying to get somewhere, get something for themselves.
Yeah, so for me, it's a surrender. I mean, the the path from duality to non-duality comes from a surrender, and you can see that a whole different world opens up with non-duality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's already here opens up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when was your first experience of non-duality? What was your first awareness of it? Like, where did it start for you?
That's interesting too, because you know, at first non-duality can feel like a concept, and then it can become an experience. And now there's no feeling like it's an experience anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Now it feels like a suggestion,
Mm-hmm.
just words that happen to have come out of this mouth.
For me, it's a view. It's a lens through which you can see reality. It's not the only view. As our teacher says, this too is true.
Mm-hmm.
Not only this is true, this also is true. And that opens up what's a view of totality. There is made up of all the possible views. all the possible views of the past and the future. All the views are available.
Yeah.
I'm gonna turn on some cools. Tell me if it's too noisy.
You feel it getting cooler?
Yeah. It's nice. Nice breeze.
Yeah.
What was your first experience of non-duality?
I read the book Shogun, and I jumped on a plane and went to Japan and went to Zen temples
Mhm.
where
What was
they
the
rake the garden gravel. I was there 2 or 3 weeks, 3 weeks, I think. Yeah. Yours?
I think probably in a retreat at a Silmar. I remember when I first started in the diamond work, you can't go to the long retreat until like you're there like 4 or 5 years, you know. And I remember the first year be like 16 talks or 14 talks for a thing. And like the first year I could understand the first talk, and then the second talk I just was lost, you know. And then like the second year I could understand the first talk and the second talk, and the third talk I was lost, and it would go like that. But there was some point where just being exposed to a teacher who kind of held those concepts but emanated that, and then being able to be outside walking the beach, you know, in between sessions, the feeling, I remember walking the beach and feeling, you know, like I was the waves, you know, I was the sand, I was the bird, you know, that feeling of like I was everything. Yeah.
You got transmission.
Transmission. Yeah.
Are you aware of your own transmission?
No, and it's a good thing to point out because transmission is about energy. And it's very beautiful to bring up energy. And certainly this body can feel more comfortable in certain environments with certain people or certain plants, certain animals, eating certain food, you know, wearing certain clothing.
I'm aware more and more of everyday transmission. Like I'm
Yeah.
aware of uh, feeling you, feeling me.
Mhm. So you're
Yeah, and that is
aware of relational transmission, of opening your
empathetic.
field to somebody else. So feeling them,
I
feeling
mean,
you.
one way to see it is that each of us is a data, a set of data. And then when we're together, it's like it's being updated, right? You're you're no longer the one that walked on the beach when we were in Oregon, you know.
Right.
Now it's all been updated here.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's undeniable, the energy.
Yeah. But what happens when the viewer disappears is there's only experience. There's no more subject and object.
Yes, exactly. And there, if there's no, if there's no experiencer,
You're right. That's what disappears.
Mhm.
And what you're left with is pure experience.
feeling, thought,
Sensation.
sensation,
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
just whatever is happening. And it's
And
interesting as if what has been seen, I want to hear what you had to say.
Okay.
what?
Go ahead.
Well, when we have a pleasant experience like non-duality or enlightenment or whatever, we habitually think that the way to have that again is the same path.
Mhm,
And that means that we're not open to many other ways, right?
mhm,
Because, well, the way I had it the last time was this and this and this.
mhm.
And that, when that disappears, when there's no longer conditions to have it, there's freedom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that really is the game. The game is freedom. And then while you're playing that game, you differentiate between freedom from and freedom to and freedom for and just simply freedom.
Yeah. When there's no experiencer, there's no one chasing an experience to
Yeah.
happen again, so they can feel non-duality.
Mhm.
It's just
It's really, and it's really,
sorry, go ahead.
I just love feeling into those three different states. The feeling of freedom too, you can feel like the energetics kind of constrainment start to open and boundaries open. Freedom too, like I'm not contracted or constrained. And the freedom from is part of that constraint. Feels more like the back.
The big ones that you have to tackle are time and space.
Mhm.
Being free with regard to time, being free with regard to space. Those they just take a lot of experience. Because basically the way we learn language, time and space are necessary.
Mhm.
But it turns out that they're not. It turns out they're just concepts that we accept as reality.
Yeah.
So what's your experience when you are free of time and space? What's that like?
Nothing. It's like nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing experiencing itself.
Right. There's this series that I've been watching now for months about Vietnam from the point of view of Vietnamese. The guy who wrote it, he got a Pulitzer Prize for writing it as a novel, and then it was turned into a series on HBO. But the key to the whole thing is the phrase, nothing is more precious than independence and freedom. But it takes a lot for the key guy to get that sentence right. Nothing is more precious than independence and freedom. And that's the way it is in the East. The East doesn't have emptiness. The East has nothing.
Yeah.
Or as Hamid says, when all you got is nothing, you got nothing to lose.
Yeah. If that's not freedom, I don't know what is.
But it is really, to me, it's just the ability to be aware of the reconstituting of awareness
Reification.
every moment.
You can't stop it. You just have to be aware that that's what's
Right,
happening.
right. That the world that I'm aware of in terms of the sensory input it's not just one thing, it's re-upping. It's happening over and over again. And to really be able to
Who is
feel
aware of it?
We had a conversation in the car in the last couple of days about what was a diamond heart, and her way of talking about it is her way of getting to what every spiritual tradition wants: boundless realization, boundlessness, no limits.
Yeah.
Right? And it turns out that that's very difficult to get free of.
to get free of the
experience.
boundless.
Yeah.
Mhm. And what's your sense of how that happens?
That's what the Vajrabody and the freedom
Absolute,
vehicle,
right, right.
absolute.
So that beyond this concept of boundlessness, there's a different layer of the word, it's not the awareness, but just of where manifestation is actually happening, the absolute, which is that higher level of manifesting. It's the Ein Sof in the Kabbalah, the Ein Sof, where everything is manifesting from the unmanifest.
It's the source.
It's the source.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting about freedom is there's no way really to talk about freedom without creating a duality.
Say the last sentence again.
No, she said there's no way to talk
No way
about
to talk about freedom without creating a duality, because unless you say there is only freedom, but if someone talks about being free of something, there's an instant subject object relationship.
right, yeah.
Free of what? If there's
Free
nothing,
from.
there's nothing else. There's nothing to be
That's
free from.
in our school, that's the process of reification. You can't not do that because we have to have concepts to communicate. I can't talk to you about freedom without reifying freedom, making it into
A thing.
a concept,
Right.
right? And that's the trap of language.
There's no right way to talk.
Yeah.
Right word.
Right. Right.
But it was just, there was freedom. There was a feeling of freedom in this body with that concept of that there was nothing to be free from,
Mhm.
nothing else.
Right, every time your awareness stretches, there's more freedom, and some of the boundaries shift
Yeah,
and open.
Tissue. Which we call simply freedom.
Simply freedom.
Simply freedom. That's just it.
That's it. That is it.